In the basal metazoans, we will be discussing about cnidaria. The cnidarians are the organisms which are also called nettle bearers. Nettle is a plant which is containing very thorny and the prickly thorns. That means it pricks the organisms who come in contact with it. So these are the organisms which are the similar in this instant. They are also causing the harm in the form of stinging nettles. And these include the sea anemones, jellyfish, and corals. And the cnidarians are the least complex of the true metazoans, which are eumetazoans. In the previous topics, we have discussed about the parazoa, and in which we have discussed mainly about the poriferans, the sponges. But in here, we are discussing about the cnidarians, in which we include the jellyfish and corals and all the other organisms which are simplest of the eumetazoans. And they have very few tissue types. The tissue type, as we have known that as the organisms are simple, the differentiation in the cells and the tissues, that is not very much demarcated. They have less tissue types and less cell types. For these type of organisms which are cnidarians or the coelentrates, these are also called coelentrates. These are having very limited number of the tissue types. And they are having the radial plan. We have discussed already about the radial plan. What is radial plan? The radial plan is the plane in which you can cut an organism in more than one planes and it still have the mirror image cuts on the both sides. So the cnidarian, although there are no specialized organs and there are only few tissue types, they are more complex than the parazoans. We have discussed about the parazoans, the sponges. Even though they are the simplest among the eumetazoans, they are still complex than the parazoans. In the cnidarians, there are two basic strategies of life. One is the polyps and other one is the Medusae. The polyps are sessile. Sessile means they do not move. They are attached to the surfaces and they occasionally jump from one place to another, but mostly in their lifetime they remain static at one place. While the Medusae, they swim and they are able to move from one place to another. The example, how does a polyp look like, is Hydra. And how does a Medusa look like? That is the jellyfish. So jellyfish has this like structure and there are the tentacles coming out of it. And that is a Medusae structure. So Medusoids and polyp appear different, but they are essentially same inverted structures. So even though they are looking different, they are in same in structure wise, except that they are having the inverted structure. That means the inside comes out and that becomes the Medusae. And if the inside comes in, the tentacles come out, that is the polyps. And that is what we will be discussing in the next slide, in which we see a diagram. So here you can see the cnidarian life cycles, and it is the generalized view of the life of the hydrozone, obelia, and alternating between the conspicuous polyps and Medusa stages. So obelia is a hydrozone. Hydrozone is a further division of the cnidarians. And here you can see the polyps. Polyps are just like, if you say crudely, the plant-like structure on the right side, and it is labeled as polyp, and you can see the tentacles coming out of it. And these polyps are, at some point detached from the stalk and they become the Medusa. Now, Medusa are doing the sexual reproduction. The Medusa bud out of the polyps and then they do the sexual reproduction and they make the sperm and eggs and then they will again form the polyps. So in this way, they are having their own life cycle. And here you can see both the parts of the life cycle. One is a polyp on the right side and the Medusa on the left side. In the next slide, you can see the classes of the cnidarians. The first class is the hydrozoa. The hydrozoa are the polymorphic forms. And now, what is meant by the polymorphic? Poly means many, morphic means their external structure. So that means their forms are very, very different in their structure. And they are having undivided enteron. Enteron is the internal cavity that they form, in which they take out all the food. And it is sort of a stomach, because it is the very ancient stomach, because they take the food in and then they digest the food in that enteron. And they have the solid tentacles and they make the colonies. The individuals, which are the Chondrophora, these are the oldest cnidarian, and they have been seen in the fossil record. And these class hydrozoa has been found from the Ediacaran to the recent times, right? So you can see these organisms even today, but the individuals which were related to the class hydrozoa have been found in the layers of the Ediacaran era. Now the next class is a Scyphozoa. These are the groups which are related to the jellyfish. As you know, that jellyfish has very, very such a structure, very, very soft structure, which can not be fossilized. So they are normally found in the Lagerstätten, and you already know what are the Lagerstätten. These are the very, very well preserved layers of the fossils at one place. And the Conulata are the extinct one among these individuals. These were the organisms which first appeared during the Cambrian region, and the most of them went extinct during the mid-Triassic. So, and we see the evidence of the individual found from these families from the Ediacaran region, Ediacaran era to the recent times. And then comes the Anthozoa. Anthozoa are almost entirely marine, and they are sessiles, and they form the colonies. They have the mobile larvae, which is called planula, and these are the organisms which are making the corals. So the Octoralia class include corals, sea anemones, and they produce spicules. The spicules are the small siliceous or carboniferous, these are the silica particles, or the structures which are made up of silica. So when they deposit, they make the microfossils, which we can study, as we have seen that microfossils are very important. In the petroleum studies, the people who explore the petroleum, they are very much interested in the microfossils. And these are again found from the Ediacaran era to the recent times. Then there comes the class Cubozoa. Cubo, as the name indicates, cubo means cuboid, cube and zoa means the animal. So the sea wasps and the box jellyfish, these are the Cubozoa animals. Both Medusae and Polyps are present in them. And these are restricted to the tropic and subtropical latitudes. That means these are near to the equator. And they have been found from the Carboniferous to the recent times. And then the last thing, which is about the corals. So corals are the organism which make the coral reef, and these are very, very important because these are most diverse and most threatened ecosystem on the planet's surface. The coral reef are containing so much diversity that most of the plant species, most of the animal species which are dependent on the corals or which are using the habitat of the corals, they are present in the coral reef. The shallow water coral reefs are zones which are extending 30 degree north or the south of the equator, and these are the reefs which may maximum present below the water surface of 30 meters. If the water surface is more than 30 meters, then they won't exist. And so is the case in case of temperature. So they cannot exist less than 18 degrees Celsius as well. So coral reefs are very much endangered because they are having very much environmental insults which are destructing these valuable, precious earth resource. So we must protect the coral reefs.